Big crowd, especially for business hours here. And by the way, everybody, we are open to feedback. We've experimented with times. We've got some great engagement during business hours, specifically the lunch hour here on the East Coast. Peggy's out there on the West Coast. So breakfast time still. And then we do a lot of after hour evening presentations, but always looking for feedback. So if there's preferences, please feel free to share them. And the other thing we'd love to find out and welcome, first of all, is what's the graduating class of the student in question here? So we have, I know 2024 is like the sweet spot. We're trying to get you guys ready to tackle this thing as you're probably in the infant stages of starting to really get serious about this and putting a list of schools together, maybe touring or getting ready to start touring. We're largely talking to class 2024 and underclassmen, but I think I saw 123 in there. But yeah, just pop those classes in there. And then if you're open to sharing where you're at in the country, that's always fun to see too, because generally we got folks from all over. NYC, a lot of Northeast folks, Texas, Denver, Southern Cal, good old Massachusetts.
Arkansas in there, nice.
Arkansas, look at this. All right, so we get the Bay Area, some more Texas, Virginia, Maryland, Arizona, Chicago. All right. Awesome. So listen, without further ado, I mean, we got a lot to cover in the next hour here. So let us quickly introduce ourselves. My name's Matt Carpenter, one of the founders of College Aid Pro. I've been doing this, like I mentioned, I'm up here in Massachusetts, about 15 miles north of Boston, Salem, Mass. I live in Beverly, Mass, but I'm a North Shore boy, born and raised here, as we say. But yeah, and I've been my entire career trying to help families navigate this process of that's a beast, right? How to do this in such a way that my kids are not going to graduate with too much debt, and I, as the parent, are going to get to retire someday and hopefully not kill each other in the process. I think from a high level, that's what we're hoping to do here. We've been doing it successfully for a long time, and we just love putting people through this process, right? Because I don't care if you have resources, if you have no resources, if you have a really smart kid, if you have a middle of the pack kid, there's a right way to do this. Everybody has a successful path to a great finish line. And I think we're pretty good at helping folks figure out theirs, right? And everybody is unique. So that's what we're all about. We're psyched that you join us. Peg and I do this all the time, all day, every day, trying to coach people up on how to navigate this thing. And that's why Peggy has earned her title as the fairy godmother of financial aid. Without further, and Peggy's been, and one of the best things she has on her resume is she's been through this deal herself, right, with her twin kid. Yeah, if you want to say hi, Peggy, then we'll get ready to dive in.
Yeah, and I'll say, because we've already gotten the question and we always announce this, yes, we'll send you a recording and the slides. You'll get that tomorrow with a lot of other great information. So if you do have to step away, don't worry about that. And also, we love questions. So if you've been on them before, you know that about us. So all the questions should be put in Q&A though. If we ask you to put something in chat, great, but you really put your questions in Q&A, so we have one place to watch. And also you can be anonymous in Q&A, which is great. Carp mentioned, or Matt mentioned before, if you want to put in chat, because we are trying to play around with the time of day that we do stuff. If you want to just put in chat, if you'd rather have a presentation that's more like evening or dinner time Pacific to evening, just put PM in the chat. If you don't care and this is a great time, then just put AM and we can see what resonates for people. But yeah, so my background, I'm in the financial industry, and then my kids hit high school, my kids, Shannon and Brennan, and I couldn't believe how complex, not the saving for college, but figuring out how to get these discounts that we're going to talk about today and how financial aid works. It was so crazy, confusing and stressful. And so I switched gears and tweaked and just started focusing on this and started my own business, Way to the Quad. And then I joined CAP back in 2021, was lucky enough to meet these guys, beta test the software, was part of the development, and here we are. So it's all good. So why don't we get kicked off here? Because we got, as Matt said, we got a lot to cover today. So let's get it.
Full slate, yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that have not already, we shot you an email earlier. And Peg, if you want to put the link in the chat again, and you see our mission here, which we're all part of this now, right? We got to end the student loan crisis. And our belief of how this happens is by making the right decisions beforehand, right? Not retroactively, but so you guys are really a huge part of this movement that we're hoping and starting to have some success shifting the tide here. But the question we get all the time is where should we start? We're just starting to sink our teeth into this or approach this reality, take our head out of the sand, whatever you want to do. And if you want to go to that slide, Pay, what we recommend is that you open up a free account, mycap.collegeaidpro.com, because we're going to focus today on how this whole process works, financial aid, scholarships, etc. But you should really leave here, in addition to some knowledge around the process from a macro level, how is it going to work for you? And that's what this thing does right away, is it's going to tell you, here's how much financial aid you're going to be eligible for, if any. Here's how much scholarships you're going to be eligible for, if any. So that's the first thing we want to get our arms around, because the answers to those questions are going to inform how we put together a smart list of colleges that are a great fit for our kid in terms of what they're looking for, but also for us as a family financially. So if you haven't done so already, just again, set up your account, because we'll be in and out of it today and teaching through the platform itself.
Okay, sorry, I was just answering a question. Okay, so let's get kicked off here. So how does what I affectionately call the crazy world of financial aid, how does this all work? And this is really valuable for all you guys that have younger kids, so that if you got a 24, you're coming up on this where you're building the list and you want to understand how the financial fit piece works. There's academic, personal, but also the financial fit. And so just being on here, you're going to be ahead of the game on the financial fit piece. So basically, all these colleges have this cost of attendance, which is their sticker price, right? But they're all discounting. It's just a matter of how they discount. So you could get lucky if you don't have any knowledge and build a list where you're getting discounts, and you could be unlucky where you have a list and basically you're paying full sticker price. And I would venture to guess that nobody on this webinar wants to pay full sticker price at any school. So how are these colleges discounting? They're discounting in three different ways, and not necessarily just one of them, but three different ways. So first, they may offer what's called need-based grants. So as the name says, if you have financial need, and we're going to talk about that, how do you know if you have financial need? And it's going to differ from school to school. They will offer need-based grants. Sometimes they even call them scholarships. I was just looking at an award letter with a family yesterday, and it was called a scholarship, but it was for need, right? So they do play around with the language, but this is based on you having financial need. The other flip side of the free money is merit-based scholarships. So you don't have to have any need. Bill Gates's kids can get merit-based scholarships, grades, test scores, talent, sports, music, whatever it happens to be. This is given out by the Office of Admissions, and they don't really care about your ability to pay. They're already discounting their sticker price to entice that student and that family to come. The last bucket we call self-help. So this is loans and work study. So it's a part of many families' college funding strategies, but you either have to pay it back or you have to work to make it. So you want to maximize the first two buckets if you can. This is basically the college's endowment money that they're giving out to discount the cost, because these colleges, it's really all about net revenue for them. They know they're going to have some full pay families and they love them, but they know a lot of their families, they're going to be kicking in and discounting the price. But if they cost 70, but 55,000 comes in the door, that's a heck of a lot better than zero. And that's really how they function. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's just talk about the need-based aid and how that works. So this cost of attendance that I referenced, so that's tuition and fees, room and board, books, and then travel and personal expenses. So all the schools will come out with this. Usually in June, it's the official cost of attendance for the upcoming school year. As we know, this has been going up for decades. We have no control over the cost of attendance. Then they look at something called an expected family contribution. We call it EFC. This is what the colleges think you as a family can afford to pay for 1 year of school. And that's why you submit financial aid forms, so they can calculate the EFC. We're going to show you a sample family in a minute, And there's 2 different EFCs. So it's not as straightforward as it could be. They take the cost of attendance, they subtract that EFC, and they get your need. So if the school costs 80 and your EFC is 100,000, you don't have to pay 100,000, but you have no need, right? That's a negative number. But on the flip side, if they cost 80, your EFC is 40, then you have need of 40,000. Are they going to give you 40,000? Some schools will not. And how they need it, that's all about their financial aid policy and how they function. And that's what you guys need to understand as you're guiding your child to build a list. So how is this EFC calculated? There's 2 main pieces. There's income and there's assets. So there's student income and student assets, and parent income and parent assets. So what is considered an asset in this formula? Only non-retirement assets. So if you've been a great saver and you have big balances in IRAs, 403Bs, 401Ks, Roth IRAs, that's a retirement account. None of those balances will be counted in the calculation of your EFC. Okay. Parent assets versus student assets. Parent assets are assessed at a much lower rate, up to 5.64%, whereas student assets are going to be assessed at 20 or 25%, depending on the school. So that's why you hear all the time, hey, get money out of your child's name. That may be applicable to your family. It may not matter for your family. So you need to understand your specific family if you should be moving stuff around. When it comes to 529s, if you have 529s for your kids and you're the owner, one of the parents is the owner, and you're married, that is considered a parental asset. So that's a good thing because it's assessed at a lower rate. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make on financial aid forms. And it's very understandable because your child's a beneficiary. You would think it's their asset. It's for them. I won't go into why, but basically it's yours. You still own it as the owner. You could take it back. So from an IRS standpoint, it's not their money. It's not a gift. So that's how the asset piece works on both sides. The income is the biggest driver in this equation when you look at the back end of the equation, and parental income is the biggest driver because most kids don't have high income, right? So that's the biggie. So that's why it's really important to understand how that works so that you don't make mistakes. People always say to me, I have car loans and I have credit card debt. It's not asked about on the forms, but it is something you can always share. This is a situation where you want to be open, you want to be honest, and you want to be open with the colleges when it's going to benefit you. If you have a strain on cash flow, that kind of thing, and debt is a strain on cash flow. So it's not asked about, but just planting the seed down the road if you're appealing, that's stuff that you can share. Your home is, for a lot of people, one of their biggest assets. And when I say home, a home you live in, not real estate property that's outside of your primary home. And there's a group of schools that will look at that. The FAFSA only schools, which is most schools in this country, do not, but these other schools do. So you just want to remember when you are putting down the value of your home, you want to find the lowest defensible value for your home and then take off about 20%. It's called the IRS quick sale value. You're not going to realize all that money. It's totally legit. Take that off. Planting that seed, just jot that down. And remember, you're going to get all these slides. You don't have to be massively taking major notes. So the income piece, I said it's a big driver. So let's talk about what income they look at. So if you have a class of 2024 child, those forms are going to go live October 1 of this year. And you're going to notice that all the questions that are asked are going to be all about 2022. It's a 2-year look back for income. It's called prior year. President Obama put this into place years ago. So you have some time to plan. I saw some 25s on the list. The tax year that starts to matter is January of your sophomore year, your child's sophomore year of high school. The takeaway here is you don't want to take a big distribution out of your 401k that you didn't need to. A big one is don't create capital gains that you don't need to. If you have a financial advisor, talk to them. They probably don't understand this process at all. Don't mitigate capital gains, all of those things. Because once you elevate your AGI, your adjusted gross income, then you're going to have to talk your way out of that with the colleges down the road. For students, I said that's a driver, but on the FAFSA, there's something called the income protection allowance, and kids can make about $7,000, and it's actually going to keep going up to close to 9 or 10, and it's a wash for the FAFSA only school. So it's not a big driver because most kids, they just don't have that type of income. But for the parents, this is the big one. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about your income. I will tell you, it's good to make a living. It's good to make a good living. Okay. It's much harder on the flip side. All right. So that's income. That's how it gets calculated. So let's take a minute, and Matt's going to share his screen. We're actually going to show you a sample family, because I think it helps with learning to actually see. I've shared some stuff with you guys, and now you can actually see it in practice. So this is Junior's dashboard in our MyCap platform. And you see there's actually 3 EFCs up here. This consensus EFC is going to go bye-bye because they're not even worth talking about it. This group of colleges has disbanded. So there's really 2 EFCs, and I alluded to these, the federal EFC. Most schools in this country, there's a little bit less than 300 that will require a second financial aid form that we'll talk about in a minute. And they calculate a second EFC. You've still got 2 EFCs that's called the institutional EFC. And so the biggest difference between those two for most families is that primary home equity. And when I say equity, that means market value of your home minus all your mortgages. If you got a HELOC, a primary mortgage, whatever that is, that's your equity. And these schools will look at it. Some of them will look at most of it as a liquid asset, which is crazy, but they do. And you can see that when we look at the example of a few schools we have in here for junior. So both Amherst and NYU they require the CSS profile, and they follow the institutional methodology. So you can see that the EFC is 54,000. As I said earlier, cost of attendance minus EFC is your need. And you can see here what we're doing here is we're projecting your net cost, because that's really what matters. Grabbing maximum discounts, and what is it really going to cost my student and my family. And you can see this dramatic difference between Amherst and NYU. You're getting discounts at both schools, nice discounts, but it's much higher at Amherst because Amherst doesn't look at home equity. So we have that built in here. We know we have tranches, right? We know how the colleges are doing things and how they differ, and we built it in. So that's a massive thing for you guys to know and to be able to see for your family. If you own a home that's worth $1.5 million and you don't have a mortgage, right? Other colleges are going to look at that dollar for dollar. You can appeal on it, but they're still going to do that from the get-go. The other thing this is the thing that's so counterintuitive in this process, is look at the net cost for this family for Amherst. And then Harp, if you go over, then look at UMass Amherst. So this is a Mass kit, right? The cost for Amherst, very expensive private school, is less than the in-state tuition for this family by the tune of about $6,000. So you would never think that. Like families, when they first get in, oh, that school costs 60, they do the math times 4. We can't afford that. When in fact, that school for certain families could reduce their costs to the point of being in-state tuition. So
And that's why, just to break in, Peggy, quick, and like, at least initially as you guys are getting started, that's what I want you focused on. Like, we just threw a lot at you, new terms for most of your EFCs and consensus, and also on home equities getting brought in. And how should we value that, right? It's a lot. That's all great information. That's why you want to make sure that you're revisiting this recording. But for right now, pop schools in there and see how much they're going to cost you, because that's what ultimately matters, right? And the biggest, or one of the most counterintuitive parts of this process, is the fact that the sticker price has very little to do with how affordable or not the school is going to be for your family, right? I don't want you focused on a sticker price. I want you to focus on what's it going to cost you, because this isn't a terribly wonky situation. We didn't put in a strange case study here. This is average income, average assets, family of 4 Boston suburbs, and the $85,000 college is going to be more affordable for them than the $35,000 state school. So to me, those are the big takeaways here. Did you want to add anything else, Peg? I know I just summarized what you were saying quick, but I think it's
you love to do that.
I have to. I have to.
No, you go.
And I think, if you want to show.
Let me hop back in here, and I'll let you talk about aid now.
Okay, there you are. Okay, so we just been doing this long enough to know, and even just by some of the areas of the country that you shared that you all are tuning in from, there's going to be a percentage of you that are not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. I think we are right to focus a lot of our time at the beginning of this presentation giving a pretty comprehensive overview of how need-based financial aid works, because it's a little bit more complex and there's different formulas and every school is different and all that. But for some of you, we're really good about helping folks qualify for the maximum amount of discounts. But for some folks, there's no magic wand we can wave, right? You are not going to be eligible for need-based financial aid just based on a combination of income and assets, et cetera. And with that, but there's not an easy dollar amount we can give you, right? We get the question all the time, what's the cutoff for income? What's the cutoff for assets? There's really not one, right? There's too many variables baked into the equation to be able to just rattle off a number. But all that is to say, some of you are unlikely to qualify for need-based aid, or at least not that much, right? So how do you get discounts, right? And I'm especially talking to what we call internally the bubble families, which are families that their income and assets are too much, and it's usually the income, that they're not really qualifying for need-based financial aid. But the formula is telling them that they can spend $80,000 a year for college, and that's not reality, right? Times 4 years, times 3 kids, or whatever it happens to be. So where do we capture value there? Okay. First thing that we're going to do is we want to identify, where is my kid going to get a scholarship? Okay. Regardless of our income. Now, almost in the same breath, I want to, and I had this question come up a couple of times, skip down to what we've highlighted here, is that there's now about 100 colleges in the country where scholarships don't exist. Okay. There's not one Ivy League college that offers scholarships, right? Nobody's walking around Harvard or Dartmouth or Princeton. Nobody on that campus is there on a scholarship. Zero. Okay. Anybody that's not paying full sticker price, anybody that's getting a discount, is all attributed to need-based financial aid, right? No athletic scholarships, nothing. And obviously these are the most gifted students and individuals, right, in the world, right? But no one is there on a scholarship. Okay. That's the same is true with the NESCACs, Ivies, Middlebury, and Williams and Amherst, these schools and schools of that ilk. But that list is getting longer. I say that because I want to make sure that if your family's not eligible for need-based financial aid, you're applying to at least some schools where your kid could at least have a shot of getting a merit-based scholarship. And Peg, I'll share my screen quickly if I could here. And this is, I can say with confidence, the best resource to be able to show you, where is my kid going to get a scholarship, for how much. So for any college that you put in here, we can give you a really good idea to say what type of discount are we going to get. So if I want to see why I'm getting a discount at St. Anselm College, which is a nice little private school up here in New England and New Hampshire, right? It's telling me we're getting a discount of $30,000 thanks to this merit-based scholarship. And then for every school in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer and the qualifications for each. But like I said, I think I'm proudest of the fact that we're going to say, how much can we expect to get? And guys, we got another year of evidence here. We're nailing our projection. So you can feel pretty confident that if what you input into the platform is accurate, the output that we're projecting is going to be accurate. Okay. And then you could also get some reasons in terms of the why. Okay. For each school, here's the average GPA and test scores. So if we are projecting a merit, usually this will offer some context as to why. Okay. And then we also have some insight into their business model, right? Do they just require the FAFSA, or are they a school that's going to consider home equity, right? What is the average scholarship at the school? Now we're going to give you a customized projection, but sometimes it's helpful to see what is the average award. Okay. And then as you're building this list of colleges, especially if you're not eligible for need-based aid, I want you to use this advanced search part of the platform where you can filter through admissions preferences, right? Where if you have a kid that wants to be pretty close to home and they're probably going to thrive at a smaller school, and maybe they have an idea what they'd like to major in for business. And there's a bunch of different filters you can put in there. But now we can sort based on who's going to give my kid the most in scholarship dollars, right? And maybe Wheaton College was never on the list initially, but geez, if they're going to give me a $42,000 discount, regardless of my family's income, geez, let's take a look there. Now, I had another family that said, we have no resources. Where can I find out who's going to give my kid the most in financial aid? You can sort just based on who's most generous with financial aid based on this criteria, right? And this can help give you some ideas of colleges that, again, are going to be most generous on that front. So as you're building this list of schools, we want to, again, figure out where do we fit on this financial aid spectrum? And then specifically, who's going to give my kids the biggest discounts based on our scholarship and financial aid criteria, which again, we're trying to help you sort out here. And then one more thing, Peg, if you want to bring up that slide again that I'll just mention, and this is getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but we want to apply to competing colleges, right? Because once we go a year from now, so for your class 2024 families, what we're busy with this time of year is we're getting accepted into colleges, we're getting offers, and now we're going back to get more money, right? Peg doesn't let me say the word negotiate, even though that's essentially what we're doing. We are appealing for more additional financial aid or scholarship consideration. And one really powerful tactic in that part of the process, which again is many moons from now as far as you are concerned, but what is more going to happen in order to set the stage properly there is that you're applying to competing schools. So to make sure.
Tips about how you know which schools are competing, because I got that question.
Sure. I think the easiest one is the athletic conference that they play in. And obviously for most of you, you're not going to have a student athlete in college. But for example, Holy Cross is in the Patriot League. Who does Holy Cross compete with? Other schools in the Patriot League, Georgetown and Bucknell and Lehigh. And so that's a great way to figure out what schools compete with one another, because it's not just in the class or in the athletic field, it's in the classroom as well, right? It's the institutions that compete with one another. And the other one is just the type of school. If the school that we're really interested in is a small liberal arts school in the Midwest, it's probably safe to assume that other small liberal arts schools in the Midwest might be competitors. Oberlin is competing with Kenyon, is competing with College of Wooster, for example, some smaller liberal arts schools in the Midwest. Okay, yeah, so those are the big takeaways there, but I think it's important to spend some time on what if we're not eligible for financial aid.
All right. Okay, all right. So these are a couple slides you guys will have in your deck just as a value add. We're not going to get into depth on those. I don't know if you showed, but there is in the tool, we have all the merit scholarships for all the different schools in there. If you scroll all the way to the bottom where Matt was, when we're in there next, we'll show you. So you can see all the merit awards in there, and schools aren't all the same. And if you said this, just interrupt me, Matt, but like the Ivies of the world, Zippo merit, it doesn't matter if your kid is what I call a super kid, 5.0, cured cancer, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. You're not going to get merit aid. They just don't give merit aid. So that's where, like when I said in the beginning, it's important to understand the schools and their financial aid policies, because you could build a list where you're getting great discounts or none. So all of this stuff is really important for you to understand. Okay, so what are the nuts and bolts of applying for financial aid? People that have juniors right now, you're coming up on it. It's going to be here before you know it. The forms go live October 1, and the CSS Profile, which Matt will talk about in a minute, that's actually been going live late September the last couple of years, but the FAFSA is always October 1. So you're going to be submitting one or both of these forms. The CS is not in lieu of the FAFSA, it's along with the FAFSA. So as it says here, every school requires it. And I had a question, hey, we're not going to get need, should we submit the FAFSA? Yes, because you said in your question that your child was eligible for merit aid. Some schools in the country require it on file to give out merit aid. So keep that in mind. That's just one of a lot of reasons that Matt and I encourage every family to submit the FAFSA. We strongly recommend you do that. Watch out for deadlines. You have deadlines, your child has deadlines to submit at admission applications. There's different deadlines for the priority financial aid form deadlines, and they're going to match the way your child's applying for admission. So if they're applying early decision, there's a different deadline for the FAFSA and the CS as if they're applying regular admission or what's called early action for admission. So you got to stay on top of these deadlines, because if you miss a deadline, you're more than likely going to get less money if you are eligible for money. You've got to be proactive about this. The college will send a note saying, hey, we haven't seen your FAFSA, but it might be after the deadline, right? They don't need to own you guys getting stuff done on time. So you got to decide as a family how you make that work, because you don't want to lose money. So how does the FAFSA work? I said it goes live October 1, and I already talked about the prior year, and we can update the slide because now we're not talking to seniors as much anymore, but it's going to be all about 2022 if you have a junior, 2023 for you sophomore families on here, right? So the first thing you need to do, and you can do it now or sometime before you're submitting that FAFSA, is you need to get what's called an FSA ID. And we have a link here. Basically, you're going to go in, create a username and password, answer some security questions that are going to be part of your account. They're going to check, make sure you are who you are. You need one for whichever parent is submitting the form, and you need one for the student. So you could go ahead, if you want to get ahead of this, go ahead and do that this weekend. Write that down in your password spreadsheet. You're going to need it every year when you submit the FAFSA. So you could just get that off your list. So when you're at crunch time, you don't have to deal with that, because it can take a little while, a few days for you to get approved, especially when it's crunch time. The other thing to keep in mind with the FAFSA is that only one parent, if you're divorced or separated, submits it. And this is a change that's coming up for the 24-25 school year. So I saw there were a couple parents that have a 23 and a 24. You're going to have to switch gears a little bit here, because the rules up to this point have been wherever the child spends most of their time, literally sleeping, right? That's what's called the custodial parent. That's the parent that submits. The rule is now going to be whichever parent provides the most financial support. Not really clearly defined at this point. The government might define it as we get closer. We'll see, right? So there's a lot of analysis that can be done there. So if you need help, that's something that we can step in and definitely support you on. The other form that Matt's going to talk about, both parents typically are submitting, but this is a big deal for certain families. If you have a big discrepancy in income or assets between the two parents, could be an opportunity to maximize aid from a given school. And then we're not going to get into this. We'll get into this next fall when you're starting to submit financial aid forms, but you've got it in your deck. So you can read through that at your leisure, and we're not going to cover that one. Matt, why don't you take it away on the CSS profile?
Yeah, totally. Everybody requires the FAFSA to be considered for need-based financial aid. A lot of colleges require this, even if you want to be considered for merit-based scholarship. Peg made the firm recommendation. Everybody should fill out the FAFSA. I second her on that. And you can thread the needle here too. You can decide, say, I'm not going to apply for financial aid and still complete the FAFSA, because there's more reasons than just merit-based scholarships. Even if you're not eligible for aid, that you would do that, which if we have time at the end, we can talk about some of those. But the takeaway is we recommend doing it, right? So the CSS profile is a form that's required by a lot of these, generally speaking, private colleges. In addition to the FAFSA, I think they've done a pretty good job of making the FAFSA more user-friendly. It's supposed to get a year better next year. The CSS profile is a beast, right? There's no sugarcoating this. There's several hundred questions. They're very invasive. Some of them are very nuanced, right? Like, how much can you afford to pay for college per year? And I think this is a question that has parents staring at the ceiling at night going, I don't want to say too much, but I don't want to say too little, because what if they don't let my kid? Really tough questions like this. And it can get especially sticky for these divorced and separated households. Now, like Peg said, for you class 2024 families and below, the new rule, which this will be the only rule unless you have older kids, but the new rule for who completes the FAFSA, which is only one household, is the household that provides more financial support. Again, I think that's a huge gray area, because maybe one pays child support, the other one pays day-to-day expenses and the mortgage, right? But whoever provides the most financial support, as determined by you, the families, completes the FAFSA. Okay. The other household does not complete it at all. And for families that for colleges that only require the FAFSA, they're only looking at the one household. The CSS profile for most schools that require this form, require it from both households, right? So it'll be completed by the household that provides the most financial support, and also by the other household, the other biological parent, okay? And it'll be considered. Now, you won't see one another's information, and it's not like it's a combined application. You're each completing separate ones, but it is something that will be required for schools that do require the CSS profile. Probably go ahead, Peg.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
You're good. Great questions, by the way. We appreciate all the engagement here. And you can skip this one again. You'll have
bad sheet for you guys.
So what I want to hit on quickly, and we got this question at the top. So some of you that are starting to pay attention here may have heard that there's some pretty sweeping changes coming to the FAFSA that, again, it's all going to be new to you folks. Some of them are good. I don't want to spend too much time on those now because the good ones are great and we'll all welcome them. The biggest ones being it's going to be easier to complete the form itself. And for those families and individuals that need the most resources, the ones that come from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, there's going to be more help for them. So I think universally we're psyched for those changes, okay? The other big one is child support. Right now, if you get child support, it's treated as untaxed income on the FAFSA, so it really has an impact on your financial aid eligibility. That's changing, and now they're just gonna look at it as an asset, which, without getting too far in the weeds, I can just tell you, will basically negate how much you're quote unquote punished for receiving child support, okay? So I think most people are stoked about that. There's a few of these changes that stink, but the biggest one, and the one that I'm really focused on, we're really focused on as a team, is the fact that right now, the formula accounts for the fact that if you have more than one child in college at once, the formula takes that into consideration. So for example, if my EFC is $20,000, according to my income and assets, that's my EFC this year, but next year I have 2 kids in school. I still have the same income, the same assets, the same resources. But what happens now is that $20,000 still applies to my household, and each of my kids have a $10,000 EFC, collectively making up the $20,000. Makes sense, right? That sibling discount is going away next year. Class 2024 is going to be the first year that the sibling discount is no longer applying. And that's ridiculous, right? So effectively, for many families that have more than one kid in school at once, not just siblings, but not just twins, but overlapping years, the cost of college can double, right? Now, not every college is going to honor what the Department of Education is doing. And matter of fact, Peg and I, in the meeting before this, we had a meeting with an internal meeting with the director of financial aid at Harvard Medical, who's one of our great resources to what's happening on that side of the fence. But he was sharing with us that, yeah, they're not going to change at Harvard and schools of the like, but a lot of these schools are, right? So we have started, I don't know if it's the next slide, Peg, or if you can put it in the chat, because I specifically started a petition to try to stop this rule from going through. We've got about 65,000 signatures so far, but basically the folks, yeah, the powers that be are telling us until you guys get 100,000 signatures, you're not going to move the needle. Like, we need 100,000 to even have a chance to try to get in front of real decision makers and prevent this rule from going through. It's going to take a little bit of a miracle because we got to make this happen before October, which is just, I'm starting to get, my optimism is fading by the day. But please sign that petition, please share it, and it's going to be something that
I just put it in the chat.
Thank you. So please sign it, please share it. Even if it doesn't apply to your family, you're going to be helping out some buddies, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, it only takes a few minutes to.
Not even, it takes less than a minute. You just
Pop
gotta,
in and
yeah.
sign away. Okay.
Where we at here?
All right.
So we won't spend too much time here because, again, I teased this, but what we're busy with right now, and this doesn't apply until you are either in senior in high school or already in college, because I had some questions about, is there anything we can do if we're in college? This could apply to you, where once we get the offers, how do we go back to these colleges and do better than whatever that first offer looked like? And even having the knowledge that this is a thing is a great starting point. And just know this is a thing, right? It is certainly not presented as take it or leave it from these colleges, or I'm sorry, it is presented as take it or leave it offers, but we just want to have the mindset as consumers. I don't think so. We want to go back and see how we can do better. And that's we do presentations, entire presentations for an hour plus on how to go back and get more money. And obviously there's not a one size fits all, and it gets fairly in the weeds in terms of strategy here. As a matter of fact, again, it's something that we talked a lot about before we jumped on the call with Ryan in terms of, okay, what else can you help us with when we're advising families? How do we go back to you and your colleges and your colleagues and get more money than whatever you guys offered right away?
Okay, let me just, before we close here, a couple things I just want to hit.
Yeah.
People ask them, and it's just much easier to answer live than to write it all out. Someone asked about the data retrieval tool, and usually I talk about that with the FAFSA. That's within the FAFSA. That's a way to go to the IRS site, basically, and you allow it, and they pull in your income, all your income data, so you don't have to manually enter it. So there's no right or wrong here. A lot of times with families, I'll discourage it just because, one, when I'm trying to support them after, when they have questions about their about their EFC, or they want to appeal, I can't see any of the data that pulled in because it says transferred from the IRS. So that's a big negative. And if it didn't work right, which isn't very common, knock on wood, nowadays, at the beginning it was. Also, if you've done a rollover, if you've done certain things, you might not click certain boxes and it can blow up your EFC, and it's very hard to fix it after the fact. But that being said, for some families, they have really high EFCs, they know it, they don't want to deal with plugging in a few of those fields, they use it. So it's really your choice. There's no right or wrong. So I'm not saying definitely don't do it, it's awful. But if you're going to do it with your eyes wide open and make sure that you understand the ramifications with your family, if there are any. So that's my answer around that. All right, so let's go forward here. So you want to take this away, Matt? Let me start, and then I will turn it over to my buddy here. So the main takeaway here is we have done our job today. If you guys don't keep the ball rolling in some way. If it's opening up a free MyCap account, joining our free office hours, and staying in the mix about how this works, that's great. It could be engaging with us in other ways, which Matt's going to talk about now, but please do something. Don't just say, oh, this was a great webinar, and you put it on the pile and go back to your busy life, because it's going to rear its ugly head when October of your child's senior year pops up. And if you have a list that you haven't built with affordability in mind, it's going to create a lot of stress and strain with your child and just with your finances. I just encourage you, from one parent to another who's been through this, definitely keep the ball rolling in some way. And we're here to support you.
100%. That's the takeaway here, is just like to pay attention. This is, you'll see and talk to other folks in our ecosystem. Our kind of deal is trying to guide families through this, right? And so at a minimum, just stay in touch, but I'll spend 2 minutes talking about what can we do beyond the education and the free version of the platform, whatever. And then I also have, we always, not always, but oftentimes with our live audiences, we'll do a special kind of discount just for them, which we have one for you guys today. Your colleagues that couldn't make it, we'll offer some type of discount when we send out the recording tomorrow, but we always just love up the folks that stay live with us. So a couple things here, guys. E and Peg, if I can share, everybody has access to the platform for free, but some of the features are ring fenced. Okay. You can only put 3 schools on there. You won't have the advanced search. You won't have the private scholarship system, among some other things, but everybody has the free one. If you want to upgrade to all the bells and whistles on the platform, you can click that up here. It'll just say upgrade, and then use the coupon code. And if you can put the coupon code in the chat, Peggy. So we charge $149 to have access to this for the year. If you use the coupon code, you'll get 20% off. This is a today only deal. We'll probably we'll have some discount tomorrow. What I'd probably recommend beyond that is that one of the options that we have is what we call the valedictorian option. It will give you access to the platform for the year, but you'll also get an hour with one of us to set the stage as you guys get ready for this. So a one-on-one hour with myself or Peg or any of the experts on our team, which I encourage you to mention. Again, you can meet with the director of financial aid at Harvard. You can meet with the director of financial aid at MIT Sloan School of Management. That's Ryan Callahan and Josh DeMeo. So I think some of the top experts of the world. And if you find out that after this hour and having access to the platform, you didn't get your money's worth, you didn't think it was a good value minus the 20%, you just write in and say, I didn't think that was a good use of my time. I don't see an ROI. 100% money back, no questions asked. This is being recorded. You'll have access to it. So you can quote me on that, and I'll be shocked if you do. Now, so that's kind of And there's one more kind of option I'm going to talk about but if you're a DI, you probably fit in one of those 3 buckets. I'm just going to do the free version, one-to-many is perfect, or I want more access to the platform. I want all of it, or let me talk with somebody for an hour to make sure that I'm off to the right start here. The last kind of offering that we have is not for everybody, but it's basically what we call our Wake Me When It's Over package here. And this is for the folks that, I think I'll probably fit in one of these categories here of I'm just too overwhelmed. I know what's at stake here. I don't want to screw this up, or I'm in a kind of a messy situation. We're divorced or separated, or maybe there's some friction between the 2 households. I'd like to have a third party help us navigate this, or I'm a business owner and the complexities that come with that. So I want to work with somebody one-on-one through this whole thing, soup to nuts, and have them take over, right? And that's what we do, right? We help you actually build your list of colleges. We manually complete all the financial aid applications for you, right? So we do the FAFSA, we do the CSS Profile, and all the strategy that comes with it. Once we get the offers, we're the ones that are actually on the front lines with these colleges, making sure we get more money, tapping our team of experts, being able to call Josh and Ryan and Laura and say, hey, how should we go about this at this particular school? And then again, finally helping you figure out, how am I going to pay this bill? And if I have to borrow, how do I do that the right way? There's some questions about how do we and when do we use our 529? That's something that we're going to be doing for you. So we're working with you for every part of this process until your kid moves into the dorm, is how we like to say it. Now, the price point's completely different, right? It's $3,000 or $29.99. Now, if you use the coupon code, and Peg probably put the link in the chat there, if you use the coupon code, you'll get whatever that ends up being, the 500 plus bucks off. Now, we take a limited amount of Wake Me When It's Over clients each year just because of bandwidth, right? Each expert can only work with so many folks, unlimited in the one-on-one capacity. So if you're in the class 2024 and it's something that you thought you wanted to do, I recommend you jump at it. For a lot of you, you hear $3,000 and all that, or it's just not what you need, disregard. But for the folks that this speaks to them, I'd recommend you take advantage. And again, that $3,000 will be $3,000 if you don't take advantage of the discount, right? But otherwise, like Peg said, it's just a matter of continue to stay engaged with us, join our office hours. Actually, one more thing, Peg. I don't know. Did I send you the boot camp link?
Yeah.
I can pull it up.
No, you sent it. I got it. I'll put it in.
Okay. So it's something that we're doing. It's really for the class 2024. If you want, you're welcome to come if you're an underclassman. But at about a month from now, actually, or a little bit less than a month from now, the week of February vacation for most of you, we're doing a 4-day mini boot camp that's really focused on juniors starting the process. So the first day, the presentation will be similar to this, kind of setting the foundation for how this works. We'll have Josh and/or Ryan from Harvard and MIT join us as well. So you'll have some access to each of them. Then the following day, our presentation will be on test prep or test optional. So if you're going to, as you're thinking about getting ready for the SATs and the ACTs, what are the do's and don'ts there? And how does test optional work into that? Then we'll have a day focused on just private scholarships. We have a partner that Jocelyn Pearson from the scholarship system, that's her sweet spot. That's not our sweet spot. So that's why for any voids that we have, right, we don't do test stuff here. So Revolution Prep is the guest for that day. So we try to hook up with the folks that we vetted that we think are the kind of top of the food chain in terms of partners in the space. And then the last day, the Friday, will be starting to build that college list. So we'll have Brian Ford from our team, who spent a ton of his career actually as an admissions, right, at some great colleges, and now has been on the other side of the fence as a college counselor at high schools. And in the private sector, he's just an amazing resource. And I think it has some great tips to say, here's how to get started, guys, as you're in that process. It's a free boot camp. It's an hour a day. It'll all be recorded. So if you just register for it, anything that you can't make live, you'll get those slide decks and recordings and all that. And we'll have some pretty cool giveaways and promotions and all that as well, in addition to the free content. So I think that's the next big one. But yeah, I think it's just all about continue to pay attention to what we're doing, because we feel pretty confident that we're one of the best resources out there. And we want to just help everybody to the extent that we can have a really successful outcome and end result. And hopefully alleviate some of the stress that I think is innate and to an extent unavoidable in this process. But if we can bring it down 10-20%, that's what we're trying to do, right, Peggy?
Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned, but if you're listening to this and, for some reason you can't afford to upgrade to the full platform, you're free and reduced lunch, or you just job loss, whatever it is, just email us at support@collegeaidpro.com. We're not going to ask for proof. It's an honor system, and just let us know, you know what, I'd really like the upgrade, but I just can't make it work, and we'll help you out. No questions asked. We don't want to leave anyone behind. It's just really valuable for you guys to be on top of all this. So just please keep that in mind.
Thank you for flagging that. The only thing I'll add is that we can only do that with the scholar option, right? The valedictorian that includes a 1-hour meeting, unfortunately, where we're paying all those folks out of pocket to handle those. We can't do those free of charge, but you can have access to all the bells and whistles with that scholar option. And again, we don't vet it. We won't ask you anything. We'll get you on there for free. Obviously, please don't. We ask that you stick to the honor code there, but yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Peggy. And what I tell you guys is don't overthink this, right? I know the last thing you want to think about is when you look at these scary college prices is spending more money, but this is an investment. If you're not somebody that's a good fit for the Wake Me Up when it's over, do an hour and start the process there, because there's no better way to start the foundation as you're trying to think about, hey, what do we do next? And again, if I'm wrong on that, call me on it and we'll give you your money back. No questions asked. So I don't know. I think that's it for me, and an awesome crowd. For those of you who are new to our ecosystem, welcome. A lot of great questions, super engagement, and I can tell there's a layer of education built in here already.
Yeah, really great questions. Actually, somebody put in, and I'm going to look into this, because let me know, Matt, if you've heard of this. They're saying as part of the legislation that they're changing the language, and that you have to be more of a legal separation as opposed to being it's been in the past, you just have to be separated. So you're in different households. Have you read that?
I haven't. No, I saw that comment, and that would be news to me. My instincts is to challenge that, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to do some digging and find out.
Yeah, and if the person that put that in, if you could just write back, if you have a source that you read it from, because we always have to be careful what we read. We've actually caught some mistakes on very legitimate sites like Forbes.
Yeah.
So not trashing Forbes in any way, but there is a lot of great information out there. I'm not saying your information's wrong, but if you could just pop into the Q&A real quick before we pop off now on initial draft. Oh, I guess of the legislation. Okay. And I actually have that legislation. And somebody asked about, I think you're asking about office hours. So real quick, I know we're hitting you guys with tons of links here, and I think Matt mentioned it, but we do have office hours every other Monday. A free way to pop on, and I can't promise we'll get to your question, but a lot of people like to hear all the other parents' questions too. So I put that in the chat. So we got the boot camp coming up, we got office hours, and if you think you're going to want a meeting, and a few people ask you some questions, just pay for it, grab your discount. You don't have to book it. You just grab your discount, and then when you get award letters, say, and you want to do it, or you're building the list in 2 months and you really want to get in the weeds on your MyCap account, whatever, you can do it whenever you want. And I always say, everybody laughs at me at CAP, but it's pretty much a screaming deal, because you get the hour, but you get that full platform that's $149, and you
heard her, guys. It's a screaming deal. It's a screaming deal.
Screaming deal. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. We are 1 minute under time. Kirby,
see you in 1 minute, Peggy, for the 1 o'clock. I'll miss you in the meantime.
All right, guys. Have a great day. See you next time.